Hi, good morning. Welcome to today's webinar, Selling the Ever Profitable Family Travel segment. I'm Lydia Gregory, the managing editor for Recommend Magazine, and I'll be your host today and, well, your moderator. This webinar has been made possible by Recommend and our sponsor partner, Visit Fort Myers Islands, Beaches, and Neighborhoods. The webinar is a complement to the Family Trends survey that was conducted on recommend.com, and we'll be putting a copy of that in the chat towards the end, and we'll also be sending it in a link in the follow-up email. So this is a very conversational webinar. So during this conversation with our panelists, we'll be speaking about family travel and multi-gen family travel, and we'll offer you some tips on how you can sell this market. So a few housekeeping items before we begin. During the presentation, please feel free to enter your questions in the chat box. We'll gather them together and then we'll have a Q&A session at a few minutes before the end. And then if you miss something, don't worry about it because the webinar is being recorded and we'll be sending you a link to that in a follow-up email, as well as that Family Trends survey that I mentioned earlier. So without further ado, let's start the webinar by having our panelists introduce themselves. Good morning, Allie.
Hi, how are you? How's everybody today? My name is Allie Allen. I am an IC with Travel Edge in Atlanta, and I have been doing travel for about 6 years. And I'm thrilled to say that it's taken off like wildfire, which I'm sure is the case with lots of you. So I'm happy to be here today.
Excellent. Thank you, Allie. Brittany?
Hi, I am Brittany with Northcutt Travel Agency here in Houston, and I've also been in travel for about 6 years. Love it, best job in the world, would not trade anything that it brings, and I'm excited to be here.
Oh, wonderful. And last but very not least, Gia. How are you, Gia?
Good, Lydia. How are you?
Great. Thank you. Glad to have you here.
Thank you. I am Gia, a partner at Lux Voyage. We're a private travel consultancy based in Philadelphia, catering to high net worth and ultra high net worth individuals. And yeah, we're happy to be here talking about family travel.
Wonderful. Thank you, everybody. So let's jump into the questions. We have about 20 questions, more or less. So we'll start off with, what are some effective strategies for planning a family-friendly itinerary that caters to diverse age groups and interests? Gia, you just spoke. Let's just start with you.
So there are different things that we need to understand about the family composition first. That being age, demographics, and different interests. That's super important. It's also important to get to know the family a bit deeper, knowing their passions, books they read, hobbies, even if they are art collectors, if there's something special, because these can serve as clues and as helpful data points to tie in their interests throughout the trip. Also, it's super important to understand the family's dynamic and their travel preferences, what's essential for them when they travel. Be aware of particular needs. If there are babies involved, toddlers, seniors, if you need cribs, high chairs. And also it's super important in the planning process to have a family select one family member as the leader and decision maker, as this will make the planning process go more smooth and faster.
Do you want to add anything, Allie?
No, I think those are great points. It's one of those situations where you can hardly ask too many questions. There could be mobility issues with the grandparents and then nap times for, the grandchildren. And I just think it's, really digging deep and just finding even what is the purpose of the trip. Do they want to go, what pace do they want to travel? Do they want to divide up where the grandparents do something on their own and then the rest of the family does other things? So it's just honing in really on what each family is looking for.
Do you agree, Brittany?
Yeah, absolutely. Qualify, qualify, qualify. You have to qualify your clients.
Yeah, that's a great way. That's a great succinct way to put it. So next question is, what are the key considerations when selecting accommodations suitable for families? And we're talking about safety, amenities, and the proximity to attractions. Brittany, do you want to take that one?
I think one of the main ones is going to be budget. A lot of families, they want to travel together, but I think it's important to keep them price cautious of what they're looking to spend. That way we can recommend the right places for them in terms of the safety and just hotel accommodations and things like that.
Allie, what would you add to that?
Um, for accommodations, do they need connecting rooms? Some hotels will guarantee, some won't. And so if they won't, you have to really let them know that it's a request. You can't guarantee something that the property is not going to stand behind. Like I find a lot of families, especially if they're going to Europe, they want a pool in the summer so that at the end of a touring day, the kids can hop in. I mean, it goes without saying there's, properties out there without air conditioning, in certain places. And that's a biggie. Whether breakfast is included every day, which is always a really nice thing to have. It's like one meal that you really don't have to worry about. And then, it's like if they're celebrating something, talking to the properties and seeing if there's something special that they can do. But I think the bedding is the biggest issue that I come across. Do they want a sleeper sofa, and are the two boys going to share, or do they kick each other and not like each? So you really got to find out all the family dynamics, because just because somebody's got two adults and two kids doesn't mean those two kids won't have anything to do with each other in a sofa bed.
I saw you laughing, Gia. You agree?
I agree, because we've been working with families since, I don't know, for more than 7 years. And we see the growth when the kids were smaller and they were sharing the beds. And now they don't want to share the beds anymore. So that's something that we definitely need to take into consideration. Also, thinking about safety and amenities, especially if we're thinking about multi-gen families or larger families, we try to find hotels that offer different amenities and facilities that can cater to the age groups, have a good spa, a bar, a good kids club, different restaurants. So, you can have the grandparents having a spa day while the kids are also enjoying, and everyone feels like they're taken care of.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes
And
sense.
also just adding about the safety, when thinking about seniors and toddlers, we try to avoid hotels with a lot of stairs or cliffs and finding something that's more accessible for them.
Yeah, that makes sense. So next question, how do you strike a balance between providing an enriching cultural experience for the families while also ensuring that they have downtime to relax and recharge? Brittany, do you want to start with that one?
And when it comes to itinerary suggestions, I always tell or suggest to my families that you want to leave a day. Your travel day is just a travel day. Never schedule anything then. And also the day you leave, that's an unwind day. It goes back to qualifying, just seeing how much they are looking to do on their vacation. I may recommend 2 or 3 excursions, depending on the length of their vacation, just how busy they want to be, but also considering that, especially if they're going to some of these all-inclusive resorts, there's things that they have that they offer at the properties. So you still be busy, there's still things to do, but you don't necessarily have to continue to leave off the property and come on and off. So it's just really digging into your clients' needs and their desires and just helping them just plan out their vacation to maximize the best way that it can be.
All right, Allie?
Well, I think a huge part of our job is the advising part, not just the planning part. And I've really had people where I almost had to talk them down from the cliff because they what they had in mind was going to be absolutely miserable. Like, for instance, I had a family, they wanted to go throughout Portugal in just a week with an infant and a 2-year-old, and they wanted to go from place to place and rent a car. And I mean, it just sounded like a complete nightmare. They'd have to go back to the hotel for now. The whole thing was just bad. And so I ended up talking them into just going to London and staying put. And then I had another family. They just wanted their 1-year-old to be really well traveled, and they wanted to start really early, and they wanted to go to Africa. And I said, there's no way that your child is ever going to remember this. He's not going to go on game. So I mean, I just think a lot of it comes down to our providing just common sense and good advice for them and kind of steering them towards what we know will work for them. We
Yeah.
may know more, I mean, we know more than they know on certain things.
Right. It's like Brittany said, like planning tours on the same day that they get there. It's like, no,
Yes.
no, you've got kids. You know? Gia, do you agree?
Yeah, I agree. There are times when we have a very active family and they want to hit the ground running and plan something the day of. And if that's the case, we always stir them to book like a fun introductory experience. If they're in Paris, a 2 hour sidecar tour where they don't have to be walking around, but they get to have a lay of the land and something fun and exhilarating to energize everybody. But I do agree the day of arrival to, take it slow and always have a mix of downtime and at most one activity per day. But we also think that the leisure time, not just to recharge and relax, but I think it's also fun to see those unscripted moments of discovery and family bonding when you're at leisure and see what gets the kids excited when they're walking around. I think that's also really important to have in an itinerary.
Oh, that sounds great. How about some tips? Brittany, you did mention budget earlier. So the next question is, how can you share some tips for managing budget constraints while still offering the families a memorable travel experience? Brittany.
Um, so I think when it comes to the budget, it's important to kind of help zone in on destinations. I may speak to a mom or a dad and they have an idea of what they want to do, but depending on where they live and where they want to fly to, if I can make small adjustments to just, oh, well, you want to go to Hawaii, but it's, 10-hour flight and you can cost you less if you just go to Cancun and you save money. You can save money in the budget with the air and the time when you're traveling with your kids. So just kind of helping with when they do have a budget and they do tell me all things they want to do, just kind of help steering them to places to where they don't have to sacrifice the vacation for the money. They can learn how to use how to spend that money in a better way to kind of help the vacation just last longer and just make it memorable for the family.
And sometimes budgeting is time, right, Allie? Do you see that in vacations? Like any budget constraints sometimes it's actually budgeting their time?
Yes. Yes. And it's being, you know, people just, they don't know what they don't know. So, they have these wild ideas, that they want to go to Europe for a week. And they may not even, they don't understand how long it takes, the traveling part and getting from destination to destination.
Mm-hmm.
So the time is important. And I really do think, like Brittany said about airfare, sometimes if they're really on a strict budget, I really discuss airfare first, and I like really go in and say, you have this budget, but your airfare is already 50% of the budget. And then so you divide by the number of days, and here's what you're looking at. And it kind of just drill down to make it real for them. Like if they only end up with, $200 left a day or something, that's not a vacation. So
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Do you find that happens with your planning sometimes as well, Gia?
Yeah, and I think it's the most important is to understand what's the priority for the client. If they have a budget, if they want to prioritize in accommodation, some clients say, I want to save in accommodation, but I want to spend more in experiences. Is really understanding where do you want to invest their money, and that depends on each one of them and what's important for them. Definitely.
That makes sense. So let's move on to transportation. So what are the most important factors to consider when choosing the transportation options for your family travel? We're talking about flights, trains, and rental cars. Gia, you want to take that one since you were just talking?
There's so much when thinking about families and transportation. So we try to reduce travel friction by minimizing layovers. It's no fun to have long layovers with kids. Also, if we're talking about multi-gen families, we try to consider a one-stop shop destination. So where you don't have to be checking in and out of hotels or getting additional flights. So for example, renting a villa in Asturias, and from there you can explore around. That's perfect for bigger families. Something as well to keep in mind is the amount of luggage when renting cars or when booking trains. Sometimes it's suitable to have more than one car. So all of these things really affect the type of transportation.
Brittany, do you have any
Uh,
transportation?
Yeah, no, absolutely the same thing. You just want to make sure that, like she said, layovers, you don't want to be in the airport for 5, 6 hours with kids or overnight flights. I try to keep those to nonstop. If it's a much longer trip, then you just make sure this lay it's not bright early 5 a.m. in the morning, which could be harder for the kids to get up, and just kind of keep all those things in mind. When you get into destination, I usually get private transfers for families. That way they are all together in their transfers. So, yeah.
Allie, do you do a lot of overseas travel? Do you find any differences with overseas transportation issues?
Well, I do think if they have if they need a car seat, that's a big consideration, and that pretty much, you know, nullifies, taxis or Ubers or whatever, unless they bring a car seat. I think private transfers obviously are a great way to go. I also think with airport connection times, you don't want it too long, but you also don't want it too short, because the last thing you want to do is miss your connection and be stuck with, hungry, cranky kids. Yeah, nonstops are the best, but it's finding that fine line where you feel comfortable with the connection, but it's not going to be all day. Um,
What's a good connection hour, do you think? Like, what's a good fine line type of balance on a connection
well,
time?
like for Europe, I would never do less than 2 hours. And if there's certain airports, like if it's Amsterdam or London or um, Charles de Gaulle, those are just complete bears. And or if you have like older family members that can't walk as fast, you really it's hard. And even with rental cars, like I have a family going to Hawaii, and the grandparents, they just kind of want to sit by the pool, and the rest of the family wants to go do so. They're actually getting two separate rental cars, so the grandparents can kind of do stuff on their own, and then the rest of the family will have their car seats and they'll do their thing. So it's a lot to consider for sure.
Gia, I saw you wanted to make a comment.
Yeah, I just came to mind that when thinking about the shorter layovers, something to consider if the budget permits is to have a greeter, someone that can fast track the process, especially in this busy airports and the high season, like in Paris, London, that always does the trick.
That's a great tip, actually. So the next question we have how do you approach destination selection to make sure that it's suitable for families with varying interests, from like say adventure seekers to cultural enthusiasts? Brittany, where would you fall on that?
I think that goes back to qualifying. With my clients, I like to get to know who I'm working with. So I spend a lot of time in conversation just learning about them, their needs, their family needs. I want to know about their kids, what their kids like to do. If they're traveling with their parents, how mobile are they? Are they able to, still zip line or still just do these active things? So I think through conversation, once I kind of zone that in, another question I like to ask is, where have they been before? So I could get a sense of their travel history just to see. From that, then I can then kind of pivot to suggesting destinations based on our conversations and what we talk about.
Okay, Allie, do you have any thoughts on this?
Really the same thing that Brittany said. It's all about the questions that you ask, and the budget is such a huge driver. Um,
Okay,
yeah.
so we'll move on to a quick, well, speaking of budget, because this has to do with that. It's like, can you discuss the importance of travel insurance for families and share tips on how to select the suitable coverage for your needs? Allie, you want to take that?
I almost every single client I have these days buys travel insurance. And I really have had some good cases why it's a good thing that they did. I mean, I had some grandparents that rented a villa for 20 family members, and at the last minute, the grandmother, I think she broke her hip or something, and the whole trip was off because this was celebrating their 60th anniversary, and so they were able to get all their money back. And I just think these days, with travel being so complicated and so many things that can go wrong, I you can't ever demand that they purchase it, but I'll always at least send them a quote and say, if you want to use your credit card, just compare the coverage, primary coverage versus secondary that a credit card offers. But I just think it's for medical alone, people don't realize maybe if they go to Mexico and they break their foot or they need surgery, a lot of these places are going to make you pay cash up front, and so there's just so much that goes into it. I think it is a big responsibility to sell travel insurance, and I'm always so nervous, to make sure that I do everything the right way, and I always give support numbers for them to call. But I just think it's critical, especially when you got a wide age range traveling.
I mean, do you guys consider travel medevac insurance also as a part of that as well, or it's just travel insurance? Medevac will take them back.
Yeah, I mean, I saw a lot of Travel X or Travel Guard, they have evacuation insurance as part of that. Part of, though, I do have some people that tell me we have MedJet insurance already. And then I have to explain to them that that's wonderful, but it doesn't cover, a lot of other things,
Right,
health kind of issues. So,
Gia, do you think young families even think about travel insurance? Is it something you suggest?
They do, and not only because of the medical aspects, but travel insurance sometimes will also cover for delays or lost luggage or delay in the luggage. Your luggage is delayed, you have to go out and buy toothpaste and clothes, and sometimes travel insurance, and we don't think about these things, but they do work.
Brittany, have you had any cases where your families have had to or haven't purchased the travel insurance and then suddenly thought, oh my God, I wish I had it?
I don't think that's happened yet. I pretty much just kind of included in there, and I let them know once they see that total code and they see it's already included, they usually don't argue with it. But I have had some cases to where they were grateful that I've done that, because maybe on their way back from Mexico, I had a case where it was a group and United canceled all flights and they had to go and buy a return flight with Southwest. Well, they were able to get reimbursed for the money they spent to Southwest. Yeah. So it was things for that. They didn't know about insurance. They didn't know that can happen. So by me just including that in their price, they were so grateful to me for that.
Like Gia says, it's the things that people don't really think about it. They don't,
yeah.
Oh, that's never going to happen to me until it does, right? It never happens to them until it does. So the next question is, how do you approach, and we've kind of touched on this a little bit, how do you approach communication with families before, during, and after their trip to ensure they feel supported and informed throughout the process? Brittany, you want to take that one since we were just chatting?
Yeah, so in the very beginning, I always ask my clients what's their preferred method of communication, if it's by telephone, by text, or by email. Then once everything is done and they are traveling, I am available to my clients 24/7. So they know it's not a problem to call me. I let them know that if any problem arises, contact me so I can either A, direct you to who you need to speak to, or B, I can handle the situation. I just had a situation where clients left Easter Sunday and they were in a panic because she didn't think her daughter's flight was, she didn't think her daughter had a flight. So early Easter morning, I get up and I'm like, she's already checked in, just speak with someone at the desk, just to give them the extra sense of security that they have a person that they know that you can call and talk to when things may go not as planned.
Yeah. Gia, do you have any tips on communication with your clients before, during, and after?
Similar to Brittany, we're with the clients in constant communication throughout the planning process, sharing any updates, happenings that we find out before the trip. And then during the trip, we do create a WhatsApp group with our team the family members, and if applicable, the local partner on the ground, just so that they feel supported throughout, especially when we're planning trips in a completely different time zone than we are. If it's a trip in Asia, it's always good to have our local partner in the group chat just so that they can respond right away. That's always super helpful and greatly appreciated from the clients. And then after the trip, we always touch base to get their feedback to see how we can further personalize their experience, get feedback on clients. I mean, on guides. If we get a good feedback on a good guide that's good with the kids, we really treasure that. Because
Oh, yeah.
yeah. So
Allie, do you have anything to add?
Well, I love working with DMCs, and I love when they provide, virtual, well, have travel apps that they put the itinerary on. And if they don't, or if I'm just planning the trip myself, I usually put everything into an Access app, and I add all kinds of information about currency converters and weather and anything that they can think of when they're gone, plus the emergency numbers. And then I think a lot of people really like having that right at their fingertips. But I do always suggest that they print out like train tickets and certain vouchers, and bring with them. But I think that's where technology has really made it a lot easier for people when they're on the go and the guide doesn't show up and they've got everything right there.
That's cool. Yeah, apps are definitely a big plus with travel. What are some creative ways to involve children in the planning process and empower them to make decisions about their family vacations? Brittany, do you have any thoughts on that?
I do actually for my kids. We usually take do spring break every year. So I kind of put the decision in their hands. What I asked them to do is come up with presentations on where they wanted to go, why they wanted to go there, how do we get there, how much it's going to cost us, and I want to know what we're going to do when we're there. And they went all out with their presentations. They presented it. I told them they could kind of do it however they wanted to, PowerPoint, they can draw, and it
Oh, that's
was very cool to see, get them excited about the planning process. And we chose a destination based on one of their presentations. So it was pretty cool. I talk to my clients all the time about getting their kids involved. What do your kids want to do? What do they want to see? What are things that they're talking about? So it can make it memorable for the whole family.
oh, that's cool. Gia, do you have any thoughts on that? Oh,
yeah,
I'll
no.
get to you, Allie.
I agree. We have clients that do the same thing. Kids say, I want to go to Italy. And the parents are like, okay, then I want a presentation. Show me why. And then it fosters curiosity and allows them to research and learn beforehand about the things that they will encounter on the trip, making that moment even more exciting. Some things that we also like to do is to send our clients a pre-travel gift with children's books, with scavenger hunt or trivia questions, like travel journals, and that always gets them super excited. And sometimes involve the kids in one of the calls with the parents and us when we're discussing the activities, because the kids will naturally become really excited with the activities that they really want to do. So that's a way of understanding, what they like and what makes them tick.
Oh, that's cute. Allie, you had something to add?
I just was remembering this family over Christmas. The mom called me early and she said, I want to plan a trip. Her kids were like high school, college age. And I want each kid to pick a place that they want to go. So she and I discussed, they wanted to go to Europe. So we discussed areas of Europe that, were kind of concentrated areas that would make sense. And then she got guides, I think from AAA. And for Christmas, that's what she gave them and said, okay, each of you gets to pick something. One was into culture, one loved hiking, and so one of them picked Munich, and somebody else did the Dolomites, and somebody did, Austria. And it was amazing. And so they each kind of in each place, they got to pick what they wanted to do there. And it made for a great family trip.
Yeah, those are all great trips. I love it all. The presentations, the goodie bags, the triptychs kind of. You remember triptychs from
Yes.
AAA? Those were
Yes.
those things. Yeah, those are all great suggestions. So, can you share examples of memorable family travel experiences and the key factors that contributed to their success? Do you want to go ahead and start, Allie?
Oh gosh. Well, I had a really high-end Japan trip where it was grandparents, their kids, and the grandkids, and they did the most amazing experiences. And I had to rely on the DMC for some of this because I haven't been to Japan myself, and I wasn't even aware of everything there was to do there. But for the daughter, they went to this hedgehog cafe and another cat cafe, and then the son, he loved fishing, and they went fishing over there, and they took a lure, tying lures. They did that, and then they went to a sumo wrestling, they call them stables. So there was all kinds of, in nature, they went to Nara and saw the deer. And so we really were able to combine all these really cool, interesting things. Shopping for the grandparents, it was really fun to kind of think outside the box and think about the culture and all that they offered and make something really, really memorable for them.
That's great. Gia, do you have any experiences like that you could share?
Yeah, so we just had a family come back from Paris from Easter break with a 10-year-old and an 11-year-old. And it was a 7-day itinerary that was perfectly balanced. So what we did is we limited every day to have one activity at the most. And we kind of mixed one day doing a cultural activity and the next day doing a more hands-on experience, being a cooking class, a perfume making experience, a nighttime sidecar tour. And then the cultural tours, we made sure that we use local partners that are experts in family travel. And they did a fun scavenger hunt at the Louvre, which made it so much fun and interesting to navigate the museum. And also, one thing that we try to do with most of our clients, which is always the cherry on top at the end of the trip that makes it very memorable, is we always try to give the family a photo shoot at some point throughout the trip. Because when you travel as a family, there's usually just one person taking the trip and mom's never in the pictures, or you have a bunch of selfies. So doing this photo shoots at one point in the trip, it's such a memorable thing for them to take back home.
Oh, that's a great idea. Brittany, do you have anything to share?
Um, I think kind of the same thing, like everyone been saying. Just having that balance and making sure everything they want to do is done. I had a multi-gen family go to Punta Cana in the villa, and they were able to have their private time with the Sanaa Island and go to different places, and then have their time at the villa just as a family with doing simple things like just a game night that they don't get to do anymore because the kids are grown and the grandparents live somewhere else. So just having that quality family time and destination is really important.
Oh, yeah, that's kind of part of the whole, like, let's get the family together and just do so. You have to do this together and put your phone down. Yeah, you wanted to add something?
I just wanted to add, this is helpful for everyone. We had a great experience with Family Twist. They do a great job in engaging the kids in all the activities to go beyond and making everything super fun.
Oh, cool.
That's
So
great.
we have a question about technology, Ali, which is something that you mentioned earlier. Like, how do you leverage technology and digital tools to enhance the overall experience when they're traveling, from navigation apps to language translation tools? So you were talking earlier about the apps. Can you expand on that a little bit, Ali?
Well, I think a lot of it is just letting them know, what's available. Like I always suggest to families that they download WhatsApp, because when they're, in country, if they have Wi-Fi, they can make free calls. I'm not sure exactly what more information they want.
There was a planning app. Is there a planning app that you guys use
Oh,
that?
yeah. So there's different ones. I use Axus, AXUS. It's pretty easy to use. You can upload pictures and you can just copy and paste almost from, what you've put together. And then I made up just like a guide to travel to Europe. And it's got all kinds of information on, tipping and packing and, registering with the State Department, all that kind of stuff. So I always add that to the itineraries, even if I get an online app from a DMC. I still like to personalize it. with
Okay.
that kind of information. So they kind of have everything ahead of time. And I tell them to make sure they, use the app and get familiar with it before they leave.
Okay. What's the name of the app again? Axus, AXUS?
AXUS. There's different ones. Some people, I don't know if it's travel. There's different ones out there, but that's the one I use. It's a
Okay.
membership. You pay an annual fee for it, and
and
yeah.
is it an agency, like an agency app that goes out, or is it available?
It's available to anybody. It has nothing to do with my agency. It's just I pay for it once a year. I think it's under $300. And I just think it pulls everything together, especially if you're booking all the hotels and all the Viator tours and all that stuff. Instead of, I don't know, it's just a really easy way to combine everything and make a comprehensive itinerary for them.
Does anybody else use any sort of app to help their travelers? Gia, I see you nodding.
Yeah, we do. We use something very similar. It's called UMapped, UMAPPED, where we upload the clients, their hotel reservations, dining reservations, tipping guidelines, our suggestions, their tours, contact information for everything. We also put in their suggested driving routes, hyperlinks that will take them to Google Maps if they're doing a road trip. It's very similar to what Ali was mentioning, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Brittany, any language translation app that you recommend or anything like that? Maybe just like to stay on top of it with messages, right? Thank God for messaging that they can reach you
Yeah.
24/7. That's like the most important app, honestly, is the messenger app, for sure. So moving on, how do you assist families in finding child-friendly dining options that accommodate different tastes and dietary needs? Gia, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, so the first thing is we ask in advance for any dietary restrictions or preferences. So we always keep that in mind when selecting the restaurants that we'll book for them, and we'll pass those to the restaurants. For families, we always try to go a la carte and avoid any prefix menus. And also we try to avoid restaurants with strict cancellation policies, especially the day of arrival and throughout the trip. Now it's harder to find restaurants that are that flexible, but with kids, after a long day of touring, they just want to order room service, and you need to find like flexible restaurants that will be okay canceling last minute.
Yeah, Ali, do you have some thoughts to add to that?
I think, a lot of families like to go to all-inclusives, and I always try to book early dinner reservations for them if they would like, because you just don't want hungry kids. And, some of these places are just so packed. And if you don't get reservations ahead of time, you're really up a creek.
Yeah. Yeah. Brittany, do you find reservations are like a must even at like all-inclusives that have like specialty restaurants?
Um, yeah, yes and no. It kind of depends on the family, and it depends on the ages of the kids. Usually, if they're teenagers, it's kind of hard to kind of get them on a schedule. Once you're in vacation mode, they're kind of just doing what they want.
They're done.
So,
They're off and
yeah.
running.
So the early dinners for them may not work, but for the younger kids, especially, yes.
Yeah. Do you find yourself booking places like for young kids that have maybe kitchenettes and that type of stuff so that the moms can do, in-room breakfast like cereal and milk and that type of stuff?
Very few. Most of my families are going to be all inclusive places. So where room service, I make sure that's going to be a key factor, because sometimes they have those late night cravings when they want things, or the mom just wants to sleep in and doesn't want to go to the buffet at 8 a.m. so she can order room service for the
Yeah,
kids.
that works. Yeah. So next question, how do you stay informed about family-friendly events and attractions in various destinations to provide those up-to-date recommendations for your families? We'll go ahead and keep speaking with you, Brittany, about that one. Like, how do you stay up to
Uh,
date?
the tourism boards for sure. In the destinations that I sell quite a bit, I have connections with the tourism board, and they inform us of everything that they have going on. The destinations where I'm really familiar with, I kind of just will know what things they have. So yeah, tourism board is going to be the main point of contact of what they have happening in destination.
Okay, Gia, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree. We also, with travel blogs, social media, we also rely a lot on our partners on the ground and hotel concierge. They always know any new happenings or lifestyle events going on.
Okay, Allie, what is your source of
Well,
information?
the DMCs generally, and I also have, just like a master kind of calendar of things that are going on in Europe. But sometimes it's things that you want to know are going on that you don't want to do, whether it's the Olympics or like I had some clients going to Italy and it was men's fashion week, then it just was going to be tremendous traffic. And so it's
Right.
just good to be aware.
Yeah, that
That's
makes a
good.
big difference. Yeah, right, Brittany. Yeah, that's big, just to kind of stay away from large events. I mean, the Olympics in Paris is going to be like yeah, no, we don't want to go to anywhere in
Right.
France in that time of the year. So do you guys book through tour operators? And if so, what are the benefits of booking through a tour operator? Allie, you want to grab that one since you
I
were the last?
mean, so, one of the things I've learned, which I'm sure most people on here understand the difference in a tour operator and a DMC, but whether you're working with one or the other, I really love that. I think it just makes our job a whole lot easier, provided that they're not, you know, uh, jacking up the price ridiculously, much. But I think, especially for multi-country types of itineraries, I really love working with a DMC or a tour operator. I think they've got one number to call in case of emergency. That company is familiar with all elements of the trip versus, if I plan it, I'm the go-to person, which is fine. I mean, in some cases that's what it is. But when I am able to harness the benefits of using a DMC, I really do like to do that.
Right. So, Gia, do you have some thoughts on that? Tour operators
Yeah,
versus destination management companies?
I agree. We work on them on a case-by-case basis. It also depends on the family's needs. We have families that are very independent, self-sufficient, where they just want hotel bookings and a couple of activities here and there. But for clients that prefer more hand holding or tend to have more on the ground needs, we do try to always use a DMC that's always available for them. And adding to what Ali was saying, once you have a DMC, it just makes everything so much seamless because the DMC is taking care of them from the moment they arrive until they depart. So the handling with the transfer to the guide, everything just goes very cohesive in a very cohesive way.
Brittany, do you use tour operators when you're planning your vacations?
Yes, absolutely. I just love the way I can kind of add everything in there. So it's a one-stop shop. They can make a very low payment for a deposit. They can make payments on the trip until it's due, and everything is paid for. But you don't have to worry about adding things at the end of the trip. If you want to add experiences, if you want to add your transfers, flights, all of that's taken care of at one time. So absolutely.
Oh, wonderful. So we have touched a little bit on the multi-gen family travel. So let's go a little bit deeper on that. How important is this segment becoming in your group, in your bookings, and how does it differ from traditional family bookings? So Brittany, you want to start with that one?
I don't know if it's affecting me yet. Majority of the multi-gen I'm gonna have is gonna be weddings. So that's more about the bride. So it's kind of like whatever she wants, everyone's kind of fall in line.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I don't think it's really affecting. I'm starting to see a trend of more grandparents wanting to travel with their kids, but they're more of so just kind of going with the flow, whatever they plan, they're just here for it. They have the time, they have the money, let's go. That's kind of the attitude that I'm getting from my end.
Right. Allie, you did mention multi-gen a couple of times. So what are your thoughts on this type of trend?
I mean, I think that I'm guessing because I didn't start that much before COVID, but there was so much quality time spent with families during COVID, and I've just found that that's still, trending, and more and more I'm getting requests for multi-gen trips, and what Brittany said is true. I mean, the grandparents have the time and they have the money. And so, that's what you need for a great trip. And then, if they're paying and we're taking everybody, it's amazing how everybody will kind of avail themselves of the time to join.
Right, right. Gia, do you see this trend in your business?
Yes, so multi-gen has always been an important segment of our business since day one, but we've definitely seen it reinforced, especially after COVID. And for us, the main difference is that with multi-gen, we're essentially incorporating 4 or 5 families into one trip, including grandparents.
That's
So
a
it's
big
very,
group.
yeah, it's very challenging because it's so important to take into account everyone's preferences and strike a balance so that everyone feels that the trip is for them.
Right.
It's even if you have the same age group, all the kids have different interests, so it's very important to make them all feel seen and heard. But yeah, same as Ali.
Okay, great. So let's move on. And the next question is, and I just lost my place. Do you see bookings growing within the celebratory family segment where perhaps Gen X parents are traveling with their older Gen Z kids? And how do you cater differently to this family segment? So Gia, you want to take that one since you were just chatting?
Yeah. So we've seen this a lot lately where, especially in big cities and urban destination, we've found that parents are more emphatic about visiting trendy places or more contemporary exhibitions and events. Now the TikTok and the social media is so heavy on young adults that they bring to us these things that they've seen online. So there's definitely been a shift of interest there and parents being more emphatic about that.
Brittany, do you see this as well?
So I'm definitely seeing an uptick in like graduation trips and Kenzie's birthday trips for the older kids. I think the traditional way of celebrating is kind of starting to trend downward, and people are willing to spend their money on a vacation to celebrate a kid's graduation or turning 15 or 16 versus spending 20s and thousands of dollars on a party locally that's going to last about 3 hours. So I'm definitely seeing an uptick, and graduation trips are huge right now.
Do you see that as well, Allie?
I do. And I always tell parents, so I'm an empty nester. And so I have that perspective. And I really tell people, if they've got high school graduations or college graduations, I just stress how really important that is, that special quality time is to the family. In many cases is before there's a boyfriend or a husband or any of those extra people along. And so it's just like the main family unit. And I just stress how special it is and that they may not have another opportunity, once they get out of school or once they're in college and they have spring break and they want to be with their friends. So I think it's a way to kind of take a trip and make it even elevate it, make it that much more special. And a lot of times they will spend more because they realize, you're right, what you're saying, let's just make it really special.
Yeah. And along that kind of same vein, so the what trends are you seeing within the family segment, like specific requests? And I'm talking like more cruises or more safaris or more beach or more cities. Do you see any of that, Allie, in your?
Yeah, I have some big families, they could have 17 or 18 family members and they just pick a big resort, maybe not even an all-inclusive, but so that everybody can kind of just be together versus, and they can do that on a cruise. I just haven't had that many families do it, by cruise, but more renting a villa or, staying in a big resort where there's something for everybody, but they're still all together. And then maybe the grandparents get a bigger unit, where everybody can kind of gather.
Gee, I see you nodding your head. Is that something that you're seeing as well? Or do you see any specific, like, desires to go maybe to a certain country or to certain,
So
place
we
like that?
have for multi-gen, we're doing a lot of villa rentals. We're doing that. Before it used to be people were staying in the Caribbean, but we're seeing the multi-gen families traveling to Europe and renting villas in the north of Spain or in the Costa Brava in the coast of Barcelona, or even in the south of Spain or in Tuscany. Also, the safaris are very big with the multi-gen. It's such a special trip, and that it's great for family bonding because it excites everyone. When you see that animal for the first time, it's like you're a little kid. So yeah.
Yeah, well, I still haven't seen my first elephant outside of a zoo, but I can only imagine. Brittany, do you see any trends going on, like in destinations or different types of vacations, like cruises or all-inclusives or something? Are you seeing any trends there?
Um, they're kind of all over the place. They're everywhere. I'm seeing them in the villas. I'm getting groups for cruises, and I'm not really a cruise agent, but it's like my repeat clients come back and they want to do a massive group trip with their family. Then all inclusives, always. I mentioned the Kensei earlier, them doing an all inclusive resort where everyone could kind of still have their own vacation, but also celebrate the daughter for her birthday. So they're all over the place. They just want to travel and go.
Yeah, just want a big place to go to. Let's see, how do you encourage, and we're kind of running out of time, so I'm going to run through these a little quickly. Do you encourage families to incorporate sustainable travel practices and minimize their environmental impact? Gia, do you want to take that one?
Sure. So with our the app, the itinerary, we avoid having clients to print the 40-page PDF to bring on their trip. We only encourage them to print necessary documents like visa papers or immigration papers. Also to be mindful of excessive luggage to avoid having additional vehicles. And with families, we always encourage, and it's also their desire to add a fun community service activity. This is always super fun for the kids. We had a client in Costa Rica visit like a rescue center with wildlife, and it was very hands-on with the kids. They prepared the food, and the kids always end with a feeling of a sense of pride, and it's always memorable.
That is certainly a type of souvenir that you want to take home, right? Other than like a tchotchke or a t-shirt. And I'm just going to go one by one on this one-on-one on this one so we can answer some questions that we have from our viewers. But Allie, do you charge an upfront fee? And if so, what are the steps of communicating that with your clients?
I always charge a fee. Unless, well, 95% of the time I do charge a fee. When I have an initial conversation with clients and I kind of get an idea of what they're looking for, the length of the trip, how many elements there are, is it how many people, how many countries, I tell them up front that I do have a planning fee. And I tell them what it will be, and then I pretty much give them the price. And then after the conversation, I send my travel planning packet to them and tell them as soon as I get it back, I'm going to process the planning fee and then I'm going to get started. And I've really trained myself to not do anything until I get that back and charge the fee. There's just been too many times where it's gone sideways or I've really been taken advantage of, and I never hear from people again. I give them too much information up front. So I've finally gotten smart.
Okay. Yeah, I see everybody's kind of going, agreeing with that. And we have the last question before we go to our questions from our viewers. Brittany, what are the three most important tips for travel advisors who might be interested in selling family travel, but just still haven't dipped their toes into the segment yet?
I think you just have to approach it like any other client. You have to qualify them and just know what they're looking to do. Get a budget and just kind of see about just like their wants and needs. Just make sure you factor all of that into everything.
Gia, what are your top three tips for agents who haven't started with the family business and they're going to try to dip their toes into it?
So make no assumptions from the airplane seating preference, dietary restriction, bedding configuration. Ask everything. Every family is different. Always ask for a ballpark budget. This will save time with back and forth and will immediately help you narrow down a destination. And really, really understand the family dynamic and their pet peeves.
And you, Allie, what would you add? A quick three
It's
tips.
all great. The only other thing I would add is maybe be realistic with them, kind of manage their expectations. Like, it seems like everybody in the world wants to go to Italy this summer. So I'm letting people know, expect huge crowds. It's going to be, hot. there's going to be long lines. You want to get tickets ahead of time, so that they don't go naively,
It's not always what you see on the Instagram, is it, guys?
Right.
It's not always the in Instagram, right? That's what
Right.
they're expecting, and it's not always that.
They make me excited about the golf cart tour until the golf cart is just stuck in traffic,
Yeah. Yeah, that's no fun. So let me look at the questions here real quick. We've got some, oh wow, we have people from Delaware, we have people from Texas, we have New Jersey, California, Georgia. Let's see. As far as questions, let's see. We have somebody asking, all of you have mentioned a DMC a couple of times, and that's a destination management company. What's that? What is the difference between a tour operator and a DMC? Does somebody want to answer that one?
I'll answer it from my understanding.
Okay.
The destination management company really focuses on one destination, one country, one country basically, and they hone in, and that is their expertise. Some of them have more than one, maybe they have 2 or 3 countries, maybe they'll have Spain, Portugal, and Morocco or something like that, but that's really their bread and butter. To me, a tour operator is one step higher, where they can plan multiple destinations, but they have their own DMCs in each country that they would work with.
So the tour operator is more like the umbrella.
Like an Abercrombie and Kent, they can basically plan anything in the world. They sometimes use, most of the time they have their own DMCs also. So
on the ground. Okay.
Exactly. But
those are usually on the ground, right? The
yes.
DMCs, yes. They'll be on the ground, like in whatever destination. Okay, great. So hopefully that answered the question here. We had a couple of questions about the apps and how to spell them, but you said AXUS was Axis. Somebody offered Travify as another one. UMapped, UMAPPED, is that correct, Gia? UMapped?
UMAP, yeah, correct.
UMapped, okay. And then, oh, thank you very much. People are very much enjoying the seminar, the webinar. I appreciate that. And let's see. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And do you get many requests from Paris? Who wants to answer that one? Do you all get many requests from Gia?
Many couples, families, group of friends.
People interested in Paris? Okay. Yeah, so that's a popular destination. Okay, someone would like to hear, we have a couple of minutes here, any crazy family requests and how you handled them. So anybody want to share a crazy family story in a little bit here? Who's got something crazy?
Something just popped to my mind. It's more than crazy. It was very, very challenging because this was a trip right after COVID where the families hadn't seen the grandparents were based in Beirut and the family in the US, and they hadn't seen their parents and grandparents for 2 years. So they were the parents had a health issue where the grandparents couldn't be in a long haul flight, just max 2 hours, and he had to have oxygen in the flight and on the ground in whatever hotel. The grandmother was in wheelchair, so we needed to find like a strategic point in a beach destination where the hotel was fully accessible, and we flew everyone into Athens, booked them in a nice resort by the Riviera, but it was extremely challenging getting the oxygen tanks in the commercial flights, in the rooms in the hotels, finding all the tours to be in wheelchair accessible in Greece, which is a nightmare. So yeah, that was a big challenge for us, but we pulled through.
That sounds crazy. So we have no time. Actually, I was going to ask one more question about marketing strategy for multi-gen trips, but we have run out of time, and this has been amazing because the time just flew by. So I want to thank our panelists for their I'm speaking in Spanish and really speaking in English, for their participation. And I want to thank everybody who was here with us, joining us on this webinar about family travel. And I just want to remind you guys, everyone's going to receive a follow-up email with a copy of the Family Trends Survey, and you will also receive a copy of this recording. So thank you everyone for joining us, and we look forward to having you at our next webinar. Thank you, panelists, and thank you
So
everyone.
much.
Thank
Bye.
you.